You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday the 4th of October 2013. British soldiers close last patrol base in Afghanistan. British Army to cut more jobs amidst rows. Tesco loses locked Muslim prayer room discrimination case. Nick Griffin MEP from the belly of the beast. Greece, survey Golden Dawn down but still third party. Majority of French believe Roma should leave France. Italy, Barilla president says he won't ever use gay families in ads. Madagascar crowd burns 2 Europeans to death over organ trafficking. US is nearly world's new #1 oil and gas producer. Thought for the day, what stinks isn't perfume but what's in it. And finally, only the Irish. UK news. British soldiers close last patrol base in Afghanistan. Patrol Base 2, PB2, located in the Nar el-Sarj district, once an insurgent hotbed, has closed. The area around PB2 will be completely handed over to Afghan forces who have demonstrated they can maintain the security that has been established in the area. Brigadier Rupert Jones, Commander Task Force Helmand, said the area around the base had been prone to violent clashes with insurgents. PB2 sits in the area of Malgar. Malgar was historically a bit of an insurgent hotbed, he said. It's not now, it's very calm, it's stable, and that's down largely to the Afghan security forces. We've kept PB2 there a while longer just to try and underpin the Afghans through the summer. The British presence in Afghanistan will be almost halved by the end of this year to 5,200. All combat operations in the country should be over by the end of 2014, leaving Afghan forces fully in control. British Army to cut more jobs amid rows. An announcement is expected to be made next January, with the final number of those losing their jobs confirmed in May, according to The Times, which reports the figure could be nearly 3,000. Under plans set out in 2010, the size of the army will be cut by 20,000 men to 82,000 by 2020. Armed Forces documents seen by The Times reveal that the army is concerned that the government could intervene to prevent further job losses, with Downing Street preferring to see troop numbers falling through people retiring or leaving of their own accord, while the military chiefs want to be able to choose themselves how many redundancies to make. World at 8 comments. An underfunded and understaffed army is no use to the UK. If anyone thinks the new Euro army will do anything for Britain, they're living in Neverland. Out of sight is out of mind in Europe. Tesco loses locked Muslim prayer room discrimination case. 2 Muslim Tesco workers have won a discrimination case against the supermarket after bosses kept their prayer room locked. Abdesirik Aden and Mohammed Hassan, both 27, were among a number of devout Muslim employees who had lobbied for a prayer room since 2006. In 2008, managers agreed to set aside a security office at the distribution depot in Crick, Northamptonshire, as a prayer room for Muslims. But in 2012, bosses set new restrictions on the use of the room, which included keeping it locked when it was not in use. Muslim workers were forced to tell managers when they were going to pray and had to ask for the key and fill in their names in a book every time they entered the room. They also claimed they were forbidden to worship in groups and were only allowed to pray one at a time. Mr Aden and Mr Hassan took the supermarket giant to a tribunal claiming discrimination on grounds of their religion. Bedford Employment Tribunal found Tesco was guilty of indirect discrimination and awarded the men an undisclosed sum for injury to their feelings. World at 8. I think most people know what I think on this one. Fight fire with fire. Delegate the Muslim prayer room as a multi-faith worshipping area and allow Christians, Jews, Hindus and anyone in to worship. You'll find that Islam is not so accommodating when the boot is on the other foot. Tesco's take note. All's fair in love and war. European news. Greece. Survey Golden Dawn down, but still third party. Greece's alleged neo-Nazi Chrysiavgi Golden Dawn party still ranks third among Greek would-be voters, though it has lost significant popularity after the alleged murder of young anti-fascist rapper Pavlos Fyssas on September 17th in Athens by an alleged neo-Nazi militant, according to a survey released on Monday. The alleged is actually in brackets. The survey carried out by the NRB Polling Institute on behalf of Real News Weekly found that the neo-Nazi party is currently backed by 6.8% from 9.1% in June. The party is followed by PASOK at 5.5%, the Conservative Independent Greeks at 5.3%, the Communist Party KKE at 5% and the Democratic Left at 3.3%. Neo-Demokratia, led by Premier Antonis Samaras, currently ranks first at 22.2%, ahead of a radical left-wing party Syriza at 21%. World at 8. I do like the fact that in all news reports the killer of Pavlos Fyssas is never in doubt, and it is a neo-Nazi, and that Golden Dawn is always a neo-Nazi party, and their leaders are automatically guilty. Whether in the Greek press or British press, the MSN never once used the word alleged. Whoever the Greek police have in custody are automatically guilty of the murder, criminal activities and being a neo-Nazi. Very different from the murderers of Lee Rigby, who are alleged to have committed his murder and are pleading not guilty. Majority of French believe Roma should leave France. Controversy surrounding Roma immigrants is heating up in France as a new poll shows more than 3/4 of French people agreeing with a recent statement by a top socialist minister that Roma are different and should leave the country. A new poll published on Saturday finds a whopping 77% of French people agreeing with a recent statement by Socialist Interior Minister Manuel Valls, who said that the Roma immigrants are inherently different and will have to return to Bulgaria and Romania. According to the survey carried out by French polling agency BVA and commissioned by TV channel iTélé and daily newspaper Le Parisien, only 22% disagree with Valls, saying he should not stigmatise a segment of the population. As for the issue of how well this particular group of immigrants adapts to French society, 93% of those polled responded that the Roma are poorly integrated. That opinion crosses political lines, with 98% of right-leaning participants and 84% of left-leaning participants in agreement on the question. The poll referred specifically to Valls' September the 24th statement, which said it was illusory to think that we will solve the Roma problem through integration, since, according to the Interior Minister, only a minority of Roma want to assimilate into French society. World at 8. Who in their right mind would want to integrate with the Roma or want them to integrate? Italy. Barilla president says he won't ever use gay families in ads. Classic family fundamental, says world's biggest pasta maker. The president of Barilla, the world's biggest pasta maker, said Thursday he would never make advertisements that portrayed gay families. I would never make a spot with a homosexual family, not out of a lack of respect, but because I don't see it like they do. My idea of family is a classic family where the woman has a fundamental role, said Guido Barilla on Italian radio programme La Zanzara. We have a different concept with regard to the gay family. For us, the concept of the sacred family remains a fundamental value of the company. Show host responded that gay people also eat pasta. That's fine if they like our pasta and our communication, they can eat them. Otherwise they can eat another pasta. You can't always please everyone, said Barilla, one of the three brothers who control the privately held company. I respect everyone who does what they want to do without bothering others. I'm also in favour of gay marriage, but not adoption in gay families. As a father of multiple children, I believe it's very hard to raise kids in a same-sex couple. World at 8 says, at last someone who states the gay issue as many see it. They're not anti-gay, it just shouldn't be mainstream obligatory living. I now hand you over to Nick Griffin MEP, who talks today about Golden Dawn and the persecution of the nationalist cause.
I'm sure that you, like most other nationalists in Britain, have been shocked over the last few days to see the news coverage of the appalling attack on freedom, democracy and free speech in Greece, in the shape of the assault by the Greek state on the nationalist organisation Golden Dawn. Of course, this isn't the first time that nationalists have been persecuted in modern Europe. We had the Vlaams Bloc in Flanders, in the northern half of Belgium. which, because it was the second most popular party in the entire country, had to be banned by the liberal left capitalist elite. Fortunately, the Vlaams Bloc, of course, were able to come back in the new guise of the Vlaams Belang, and have continued to do pretty well ever since, despite the creation of another one of these phony UKIP-style safety valve parties to try and get in their way. But they're still there, they're still functioning. We're still here, we're still functioning. And of course, you can look at the relentless assault on the British National Party from around about 2007, when it really became intense, escalating after our success in the European elections in 2009, with the state attack on our very existence starting in July of that year, and as you know, wave after wave of attacks from both supposedly within and also obviously from without in an attempt to destroy us. The way in which we're denied our various rights isn't really so much different to what is being proposed and done against Golden Dawn right now. So wherever you look across Europe, this is the way it works. The tolerant are ever so tolerant until you actually threaten them, and then all of a sudden they become extraordinarily intolerant. And that, of course, is what is happening in Greece. The Greek government is in fact doing no more than applying the proposals of the European Council on Tolerance and Reconciliation, an organisation on which, of course, I spoke in the European Parliament a couple of weeks ago, causing quite a bit of a fuss. The model statute on tolerance, which sets out all the things that a good, obedient, liberal state should do, was drafted by the European Council on Tolerance and Reconciliation by its co-founder and co-chair, Moshe Kantor. Now, Mr. Kantor is also president of the European Jewish Congress. The EJC is the largest secular organisation representing the interests, or claiming to represent the interests, of European Jewry. It's an influential, very affluent, international public association representing some 2.5 million Jews across the European continent in 42 different national Jewish communities. When I use that word representing some, that's what they say. They're absolutely self-appointed, these people. There's nothing democratic about it. They say they represent them. Whether they do or not, that's another matter. I'll quote from the wiki entry on the European Jewish Congress. Quote, "The EJF implements local, regional and pan-European projects initiated by both individual communities and the fund itself. The EJF's main goal is to implement large-scale programs aimed at disseminating tolerance on the European continent, strengthening mutual respect among representatives of all nationalities and faiths, reinforcing Jews' cultural pride, and counteracting assimilation. The EJF actively fights xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and racial discrimination." Kantor has been recognised for 3 consecutive years as one of the 50 most influential Jews in the world. He was one of the oligarchs who arose in the period when the Russian state was being looted after the fall of communism. He purchased the first assets of the Akron Group, which was a state-owned fertilizer plant, in 1993. By 2012, Kantor's estimated worth was $2.3 billion US, making him the 39th richest businessman in Russia. He also serves as the president of the Museum of Avant-Garde Mastery, MAGMA, founded in 2001 in Moscow on his initiative. Some very interesting things going on here. Part of the aim of the Kantor and the European Jewish Congress is to publicise the achievements of outstanding individuals of Jewish origin in order to reduce the level of anti-Semitism, xenophobia and nationalism in Europe. This is why the EJF supports the Museum of Avant-Garde Mastery, which contains the world's largest and most important private collection of 20th century so-called Russian avant-garde art. The movement flourished in the early days of the former Soviet Union, from approximately 1890 to 1930 in particular, and included such artists as Marc Chagall, Chaim Soutine, Mark Rothko and Kandinsky. Now, the openly stated aim of this whole operation is not really about art, it's to boost the standing of Jews. In case you couldn't guess looking at the substandard droolings of the individuals such as Chagall produced in the name of art, this museum actually has very little to do with art, and a great deal to do with what has to be described as Jewish supremacism. Now you may think, oh, he's going a bit far here. Let's look at some phraseology here. Again, from Wiki. The European Jewish Congress focuses on promoting Jewish life throughout Europe by supporting programs to reinforce Jewish identity and Jewish pride, especially by reconnecting young people with their rich and vital Jewish heritage. Now, I think that's fantastic. I genuinely think that's really good that a people who've been through some, let's face it, pretty hard times in their history, who've been scattered all over the world, have this immensely powerful organisation which is openly and proudly focused on promoting their own life, cultural and ethnic life, to reinforcing their own identity and their own pride, especially by reconnecting young people with their rich and vital heritage. Isn't that absolutely tremendous? But now transpose the words. Reword the phrase like this: focuses on promoting British life throughout the UK and further afield by supporting programmes to reinforce British identity and British pride, especially by reconnecting young people with their rich and vital British heritage. See how it's different? Now all of a sudden, that's exactly what these people would describe as xenophobia, nationalism, anti-Semitism and all sorts of horrible things. If you rephrase it again, focuses on promoting white life throughout the world and further afield by supporting programs to reinforce white identity and white pride, well, you see where I'm coming from? Absolutely unacceptable, isn't it? But is it? Sauce for the goose? Sauce for the gander? This discourse isn't merely academic. If you look at the website of the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as I did earlier on this afternoon, I come across a press statement about a visit by the Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister of Greece, meeting with American Jewish organisations in New York on the 25th of September this year, just the same time as the final preparations were being made for what's been the attempted crushing of Golden Dawn for the crime of being at approximately 20% in some recent opinion polls and rising when there's very important municipal elections coming along. And on Wednesday the 25th of September, the Deputy Prime Minister of Greece and the Foreign Minister, according to this statement, met on the margins of the UN General Assembly with representatives of the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organisations, the American Jewish Committee, the World Jewish Congress, B'nai B'rith, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, the World Jewish Congress and the Anti-Defamation League. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee, incidentally, is by far the most powerful and influential lobbying organisation in the United States. During the meeting, the statement went on, the Foreign Minister referred to the strong historical ties between Greeks and Jews in the Eastern Mediterranean, went into depth on Greece's stance on all the major issues, especially concerning the Middle East and North Africa. Having outlined political and economic developments in Greece, he then underscored the importance to Greece, and I'm quoting, of the unwavering enforcement of existing anti-racist legislation and the categorical condemnation of racism, xenophobia, anti-Semitism and the instigation of ethnic or religious violence as extreme criminal acts. He stressed that the neo-Nazi elements assailing democracy and the rule of law will be marginalised by Greek society, which in its vast majority deplores intolerance and violence. Unquote. Now, I actually have no doubt the great majority of Greeks do indeed deplore intolerance and violence, but somewhere between 15 and 20% of them so deplore the violence that is being done to the Greek people and to the Greek nation by the globalists, by the banksters, by the Zionists, and by immigrants let loose on the streets by a police force which has lost control. That's precisely why they are turning to Golden Dawn, because they believe that nationalism can restore order and peace and decency to their society. And it really isn't for outsiders, whether they be American Jews or Zionists, or for that matter British nationalists such as us, to go preaching to the Greeks what they can and cannot do, let alone to go, as these various people have been doing, demanding to the Greek government that they stamp over the nationalists before they get even more support from their public. It really is completely out of order. In fact, if anything could create anti-Semitism, it's this. Now, I don't believe that it should create anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is in fact some kind of spectre created by these professional Jews, by these Zionists, by these Jewish supremacists, primarily as a way of herding their own people into accepting what they do. Let me give you a parallel. I can criticise the mafia very, very openly and plainly, in the bluntest possible terms, without anyone saying, Nick Griffin's anti-Italian. Because of course I'm not anti-Italian. I've got Italian friends, we have people of Italian descent in the British National Party. So why can't someone like me, why can't the whole world in fact, criticising what is in effect a Jewish mafia, this Zionist racist supremacist lobby that they have, why can't we criticise them without being told you're anti-Semitic? It's clearly a nonsense. The best proof of this perhaps is to look at what is said and written by that quite small but very, very significant and very, very brave group of anti-Zionist Jews who go out of their way. It's a very, very significant risk to themselves in terms of social ostracism and potential violence against them, all the whole gamut of persecution. They go to all those risks to tell people that people like Moshe Kantor do not speak for all Jews. He speaks for his clique, for his political extremism, what is in fact a brand of Jewish fascism. That's what Moshe Kantor stands for. Go online, look at the writings of someone like Gilad Atzmon, who's now living, he's of Jewish origin. He's living in exile in London. He's a jazz musician, as a matter of fact. I cannot stand jazz, but I know enough of what other people write to know that the man's a damn good jazz musician. And certainly I know enough of what he writes to know that this is a man who blows a hole in the extraordinarily crude, extraordinarily destructive and counterproductive, moronic Nazi attempt to say that all Jews are evil and all the rest of it. Gilad Atzmon, look at his writings. He describes himself as a secular Jew. He jokes and says he's a proud self-hating Jew because that's the label that's attached to him. I think the most effective and honest label for Gilad Atzmon is when he calls himself a Jew who hates Judaism, by which he means not people being Jewish, but this outrageous hypocritical extremism whereby they demand for themselves and their own people rights they seek to deny to everybody else. And that's the problem. I and other nationalists don't seek to deny anyone of any race or religion, creed or culture, including Jews, the right to preserve, celebrate and encourage their own identity. I think everybody has that right, including all the Jews of the world. But anyone, whatever their race and religion, who then seeks to deny that right to me and to our people is my enemy. And he's your enemy as well. It's as simple as that. So go online, look at what Gilad Atzmon writes about what he describes as Jewishness, quote, very much a supremacist, racist tendency, unquote. Look at his comments such as, I don't have anything against Jews in particular, and you won't find it in my writings. But that he writes that America is about to lose its sovereignty and become a remote colony of an apparently far greater state, the Jewish state. Go and look at these things and think about it, and understand this isn't some kind of Nazi extremism. This is a common strand amongst Jews who dare to speak out, who dare to stand up against the relentless and ruthless demonisation that they undergo from the extremists who in fact dominate so much of their community, people like Moshe Kantor. Gilad Atzmon isn't the only one. Look also at Israel Shahak. Look at Israel Shamir. Great men, brave men, Jewish men, doing remarkable things, speaking up in fact for us and our rights, as well as decency with their own community. So finally on this point, don't accept anyone telling you that by discussing such matters we're anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish. I repeat, very significant numbers of people of Jewish origin say and write exactly the same things and suffer the same kind of smears and persecution as we do in consequence. We have Jewish members in this party. That's a very good thing, I would say. And it's up to them, and it's up to people who have perhaps a Jewish element within their family, or who regard themselves as being pro-Jewish, pro-Israel, and so on. It's up to those people to take this up and not attack me for saying these things, but to say, yes, he's absolutely right. People like Gilad Atzmon are absolutely right, and you can criticise these Zionist, racist, fanatic extremists without being anti-Jewish. And in fact, trying to say otherwise is the one great thing that can create anti-Semitism. Because when you look at what the Moshe Cantors and the European Jewish Congresses and the people who want, quite literally, to genocide us in, we hope, a bloodless sort of way, while demanding supremacy for their own people, you see there, and when you see them trying to drag us into wars, as the whole Zionist lobby has been doing in Syria, what still wants to do against Iran and so on, when you see that, it's very easy to understand how people who take a simplistic view of it can indeed become anti-Semitic. It's for the Jews particularly, and it's for people who love the Jews to stand up and condemn these professional Jews, these Zionists, who claim to speak in their name, because they certainly do not. So do yourself and the cause a big favour. Do some research work of your own on the internet into the work of people like Gilad Atzmon, Israel Shahak, and Israel Shamir. Secondly, get directly on our website and look and read and study and learn the booklet, which is down on the right-hand side of the homepage, Arrested, Fighting for Freedom, Resisting Police Oppression. Because mark my words, what is visited on the nationalists of Greece today will most assuredly come our way too in the not too distant future. Why? Because we offer a genuine alternative, a pole around which people can gather. We are the undefeated. We are the defiant. And, in particular, we are now very clearly the effective. Kantor and his ilk thought until a few weeks ago that they were within months, perhaps just weeks, of having the West on their behalf attack Syria with a view to dragging Iran into a conflict that it could not win, so that in the end the armed forces of America, Britain, France and other countries of the West would do the Zionist dirty work for them. Not just the Zionists, as you know, I've spoken in the past about the neocons, it's not quite the same thing, about the corporations, the American corporations, many of which are run by people of impeccably WASP ancestry who need putting up against a wall and shooting for what they've done to the peoples of the world, for the money they've made out of appalling mass slaughter such as in Iraq. So I'm not being biased here. Frankly, I hate all those kind of people and they all need dealing with. But it's because that we were involved, because you helped make me an MEP, that I was able to help stop the latest war drive in its tracks by being involved in the Syrians' response and approaches to the British Parliament, which helped to swing the vote against Cameron's war. Those people know this too, and I tell you, they will not forgive and they will not forget, which makes us all targets for future repression, because they will not forgive and they will not forget. But hey, that's okay, because neither will we.
Thank you, Nick. As ever, thought-provoking. World news. Madagascar crowd burns 2 Europeans to death over organ trafficking. A crowd burnt 2 Europeans to death on a tourist island in Madagascar and lynched a local man because they suspected them of trafficking human organs after a dead child was found on a beach, police said. The European men were hunted down and killed by residents on the island of Nosy Be, one of the Indian Ocean's leading tourist hubs. They, the crowd, suspected them of organ trafficking, Madagascar Police Chief Desar Johnson Rakondratsima said. It appears that one of the foreigners admitted it in front of a local resident after they found the dead body of a child. A third suspected organ trafficker, a Malagasy man, was also killed. He was lynched, Security Chief General Andrian Nazari said. The security forces arrived too late. One of the 2 dead Europeans was French, according to France's foreign ministry. A French Interior Ministry official said the body of a child had been found with organs removed. US is nearly world's new #1 oil and gas producer. The shale oil and gas boom has transformed energy markets so much that the US is on course to become the world's biggest combined oil and gas producer this year, if it hasn't already overtaken Russia. In July, America produced around 22 million barrels a day of oil, natural gas and related fuels, the Wall Street Journal reports. compared to Moscow's 2013 forecast of around 21.8 barrels a day. Last year the US tapped more natural gas than Russia for the first time in 30 years, and the gap in crude oil production is quickly narrowing. American imports of natural gas and crude oil have fallen 32% and 15% since 2008 and are still dropping, but experts warn that the energy boom and the US lead in production may not last that much longer. Russia still has huge untapped shale reserves, and the US boom could be hit hard by swings in commodity prices, government regulation and rising public opposition to fracking. Drilling in shale is a lot more expensive than other kinds of exploration, meaning a global downturn and a fall in energy prices could dramatically slow production. Thought for the day. Your perfume, not all it cracks up to be. The thought for the weekend is short and not so sweet. As you might or might not know, I'm an animal person, love animals, sign all the petitions against animal cruelty, which can span the transport of farm animals to our so-called friends abroad, so they can have their throats cut upside down, so the brain is kept alive longer, so they bleed out slower, to the domestic abuse of animals and the sheer unnecessary nastiness of experimenting with cosmetics on helpless caged mammals. One thing that humans are supposed to be is top of the food chain, and as such should have developed the propensity for mercy, but apparently have not. In fact, a larger and increasingly human population, both to feed and cater for in fashion and cosmetics, seem to be providing more avenues for cruelty than ever, and have certainly not diminished the reality of making more money than ever out of a diminishing animal world, and it is our fault. On a personal note, I fail to see why medical experiments are carried out on animals when most of these poor beasts bear no resemblance to humans at all in their reactions. Our nearest apparently is the poor old piggy, but that doesn't save him from the chop, excuse the pun. Although I shouldn't bring it up, there were cases when the German doctors in the last war practised on themselves as well as their human victims, as did the Japanese. Although not a practice to emulate, I do feel that as we are so modern thinking nowadays, that the truly insane criminal who has no hope whatever of ever seeing the light of day again could be offered the opportunity of helping mankind that he has usually killed, raped or whatever. Then the so-called pharmaceutical companies could get a true reading of certain medications and it would save money and thousands of animal lives, especially bred for the laboratories. How can you experiment with a Viagra-like pill on dogs and patent it? Yes, it has been done, as I typed the patent documents. It is all down to money, and a sick population is worth more than a healthy population to these companies, and the fact that 2,000 hairless mice have been bred and killed for one possible money-making pill is no skin off their noses, so to speak. So we come to the cosmetic industry, which, as a purveyor of in a small way, I have noticed over the years has become really big business. Nowadays only the really cheap stuff is made in the UK, in sweatshops, and of course we have the Chinese crap that contains God knows what, but you can bet it ain't good for you or the little girl you buy it for. Children are now being targeted in the great race for money, and to see some of the magazines with very young children painted up like whores doing the rounds is sad and demeaning. Why should a mother want her little girl to be in competition with her at 7 years old? But the sad fact is that Western society has become Americanised cosmetic-wise, and most of our old cosmetic houses have been taken over by them, and we are still buying hordes of it. Now I'll draw a veil, oh I'm full of it today, over various brands of goo and what is in them and concentrate on perfume. Now I love perfume, but have noticed that there are thousands of new brands on the market, and every Tom, Dick and Harriet who makes it showbiz wise seems to give their names to a new brand of smelly gunk that passes for perfume. But it doesn't matter about the name, bottle or image, it's what's in it that should concern thinking females, and certainly animal-loving nationalist ones, of which there must be a few. What do perfume bottles and diapers have in common? They both contain infant excrement. There are 5 really repulsive items that go into even the most expensive and old perfumes that have been going on for years. I'll read them in order of the quantities used. The first is faeces. This is from civet cat glands. These poor little animals are kept in small cages for years to endure a painful process called anal gland scraping. The animals are harvested just for this purpose, and their anal sacs are unpleasantly scraped every few days. Top brands like Chanel, Cartier and Lancôme have admitted to using this cruel process for their perfume products, according to World Society for the Protection of Animals. Castoreum, from the genital sacs of the castor beaver. They're trapped and killed for it, which is perhaps more merciful than the fate of the civet cats. Both male and female beavers possess a pair of castor sacs and anal glands under their tails. Because of this, the European beavers were hunted to near extinction. Ambergris. This is sperm whale vomitus from diseased stomachs and is either thrown up or pooped out. Infant excrement. I don't know and I don't want to know, but at least they won't keep the babies in cages and make them poop in order to do it, or do they? Sexual secretions. Musk from the musk glands of the male musk deer. This is a species near extinction, and the result of this is that musk is worth 3-4 times its weight in gold. I was just admiring the smell of my Lancôme Trésor perfume, which I have had years, keeping the bottle in the dark and using it for special occasions, but now I'm not so sure. What poor animal has suffered for just this bottle, and how many thousands have and will suffer for the huge increase in manufacturing so-called perfume in the States, Europe and of course China. Now every time a new perfume is advertised, think of what it costs, and I don't mean money. Now I wouldn't go around barefaced or perfumeless, but there are companies who manufacture cosmetics and perfumes that do not contain animal detritus or baby's poop, and I think I'll make use of them in the future. Because although it might be too late for some species and very painful for others, at least I'll try and do my bit against this money-making epidemic which appeals to the frankly stupid and thoughtless amongst us. If you believe in reincarnation, pray you come back as something humans cannot hunt, kill, experiment on, eat or torture, and at the moment I cannot think what animal, bird, reptile, insect or fish that would be. Can you? And finally, an Irish ghost story. This story happened a while ago in Dublin, and even though it sounds like an Alfred Hitchcock tale, it's true. John Bradford, a Dublin University student, was on the side of the road hitchhiking on a very dark night and in the midst of a big storm. The night was rolling on and no car went by. The storm was so strong he could hardly see a few feet ahead of him. Suddenly he saw a car slowly coming towards him and stopped. John, desperate for shelter and without thinking about it, got into the car and closed the door, only to realise there was nobody behind the wheel and the engine wasn't on. The car started moving slowly. John looked at the road ahead and saw a curve approaching. Scared, he started to pray, begging for his life. Then, just before the car hit the curve, a hand appeared out of nowhere through the window and turned the wheel. John, paralysed with terror, watched as the hand came through the window but never touched or harmed him. Shortly thereafter, John saw the lights of a pub appear down the road, so gathering strength he jumped out of the car and ran for it. Wet and out of breath, he rushed inside and started telling everybody about the horrible experience he'd just had. A silence enveloped the pub when everybody realised he was crying and wasn't drunk. Suddenly the door opened and 2 other people walked in from the dark and stormy night. They, like John, were also soaked and out of breath. Looking around and seeing John Bradford sobbing at the bar, one said to the other, "Look, Paddy, there's that fucking idiot that got in the car while we were pushing it." You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar, and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend. Barilla president says he won't ever use gay families in ads. Madagascar crowd burns 2 Europeans to death over organ trafficking. US is nearly world's new #1 oil and gas producer. Thought for the day, what stinks isn't perfume but what's in it. And finally, only the Irish. UK news. British soldiers close last patrol base in Afghanistan. Patrol Base 2, PB2, located in the Nar el-Sarj district, once an insurgent hotbed, has closed. The area around PB2 will be completely handed over to Afghan forces who have demonstrated they can maintain the security that has been established in the area. Brigadier Rupert Jones, Commander Task Force Helmand, said the area around the base had been prone to violent clashes with insurgents. PB2 sits in the area of Malgaia. Malgaia was historically a bit of an insurgent. The government could intervene to prevent further job losses, with Downing Street preferring to see troop numbers falling through people retiring or leaving of their own accord, while the military chiefs want to be able to choose themselves how many redundancies to make. World at 8 comments. An underfunded and understaffed army is no use to the UK. If anyone thinks the new Euro army will do anything for Britain, they're living in Neverland. Out of sight is out of mind in Europe. Tesco loses locked Muslim prayer room discrimination case. 2 Muslim Tesco workers have won a discrimination case against the supermarket after bosses kept their prayer room locked. Abdesirik Aden and Mohammed Hassan, both 27, were among a number of devout Muslim employees who had lobbied for a prayer room since 2006. In 2008, managers agreed to set aside a security office at the distribution depot in Hotbed, he said. It's not now, it's very calm, it's stable, and that's down largely to the Afghan security forces. We've kept PB2 there a while longer just to try and underpin the Afghans through the summer. The British presence in Afghanistan will be almost halved by the end of this year to 5,200. All combat operations in the country should be over by the end of 2014, leaving Afghan forces fully in control. British Army to cut more jobs amid rows. An announcement is expected to be made next January, with the final number of those losing their jobs confirmed in May, according to The Times, which reports the figure could be nearly 3,000. Under plans set out in 2010, the size of the army will be cut by 20,000 men to 82,000 by 2020. Armed Forces documents seen by The Times reveal that the army is concerned that the Crick, Northamptonshire, as a prayer room for Muslims. But in 2012, bosses set new restrictions on the use of the room, which included keeping it locked when it was not in use. Muslim workers were forced to tell managers when they were going to pray and had to ask for the key and fill in their names in a book every time they entered the room. They also claimed they were forbidden to worship in groups and were only allowed to pray one at a time. Mr Aden and Mr Hassan took the supermarket giant to a tribunal claiming discrimination on grounds of their religion. Bedford Employment Tribunal found Tesco was guilty of indirect discrimination and awarded the men an undisclosed sum for injury to their feelings. World at 8. I think most people know what I think on this one. Fight fire with fire. Delegate the Muslim prayer room as a multi-faith worshipping area and allow Christians, Jews, Hindus and
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday the 4th of October 2013. British soldiers close last patrol base in Afghanistan. British Army to cut more jobs amidst rows. Tesco loses locked Muslim prayer room discrimination case. Nick Griffin MEP from the belly of the beast. Greece, survey Golden Dawn down but still third party. Majority of French believe Roma should leave France. Italy.